Hello family, friends, and fellow YouTubers. Thanks for tuning in. I did want to say that I'm going to be discontinuing this particular channel, Nomadic Dreams. I have a new YouTube channel called Living Nomadic Dreams that I'll make sure to put a link to down below. And all future updates will be on that new channel. So please make sure to check that out. So I did want to give you a quick update on my current travels, and then also a highlighted overview of my Northeastern trip I did this past summer. I'm currently on a trip through the Midwest that will eventually end up in Albuquerque, New Mexico for the Balloon Festival. I will be putting those posts on my new channel, again on a link down below. So anyway, back in May, I kicked off this Northeastern trip that was definitely the longest trip that I've done so far at 10 weeks, covering 7,500 miles through 22 states. I hit every state in the Northeast, up through Canada, and then back down. It was really an amazing trip. The weather was perfect for this time of the year, being in the Northeast in the summertime. The highs were probably 80s at the most, 85, and the evenings were really nice in the 50s. There were a few places where the mosquitoes got us, but really wasn't that bad overall. Had some great hikes, good camping back in the forest areas. So sit back, I'm going to go ahead and go through these pictures with you and explain where all we went to. Hope you enjoy it. My first stop was in Lakeland, Florida at the Truma dealer to get the tankless water heater replaced with a better designed, more efficient tankless water heater that will help conserve water when we are dry camping. We then drove over to the East Coast and up I-95 through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia to our first campsite of our Northeastern trip in Furnace Town, Maryland. This town is where the Oswego iron furnace was built in 1830. During its construction, it incorporated hot blast techniques that were developed in England in 1828. Furnace Town also has several historic buildings from the region that were relocated to make a replica of a small town of the 1830s. I also took a brief excursion to a local RC field a few miles away where I attended at one of their fly-ins. Visited Assateague State Park on the beach and saw some of the famed wild horses. Careful, we were warned to keep distance, they will bite. From there, we stopped in for dinner in Ocean City. Then we went to Delaware, stayed at the Fairgrounds by a casino near the Dover Air Force Museum, where we saw the C-5A Galaxy that was used for the only ICBM air test. There was an ice skate rink there by the fairgrounds we stayed at that I was able to get my skate on. Stopped in at the old Dover State House and surrounding buildings. Then on to Cape May, New Jersey, where we saw lots of interesting architecture along the coastline. And then we visited the Cape May Lighthouse. While there, we stopped in at a couple of wineries close to our campsite. And then it was on to Pennsylvania. Staying at a neat camping area in downtown Philadelphia, we visited many of the sites and buildings around Philadelphia, like the Betsy Ross House, the Liberty Bell, and the Carpenter's House. We also visited the Eastern State Penitentiary, built in the early 1800s. This is where Al Capone was incarcerated for almost 8 months. Stopped in for a world famous Philly cheesesteak, and then visited the Arts Museum where Rocky was filmed. On to Edison, New Jersey. stopping at the main laboratories of Thomas Edison, where a lot of his inventions were made, such as the phonograph and the light bulb. From there I passed on through New York City, as I've been there many a times in the past, and it's really not RV friendly. Then it was on to Hartford, Connecticut, where we stayed at a Cabela's and visited downtown state buildings and Bushnell Park. Then it was on to Providence, Rhode Island, visiting state buildings, sites around downtown, and then to an old 17th century stone ender home, the Arnold House. Then we took Jack Russell on a hike through Lincoln Woods State Park, which was close to our campsite. On to Plymouth, Mass, visiting local buildings in the Burial Hill with amazing views. We had a great campsite there. And then we visited Provincetown and the Highland Lighthouse. On to Boston, Mass, walking through the Freedom Trail, through the city, visiting many of the historic sites, such as the State House, Beacon Hill, Paul Revere House, Bunker Hill, and of course, stopping to eat some more lobster rolls. Then on to Revere Beach, an area where my mother grew up, and on to Salem, Mass. Next, made a quick stop by my great aunt's house in Hampton, New Hampshire, and on up the coast to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And of course, we stopped for more lobster. Woohoo! On to Maine, stopping first in Portland and then to Bangor. And then we made it to Halton, Maine, which is right at the border of Canada, where we crossed over and went into New Brunswick. We stayed there for about a week, visiting Fredericton along the St. Johns River. This is the capital of New Brunswick. From Canada, we went back through Maine and into New Hampshire to the wilderness of the White Mountain National Forest. This was a very secluded, peaceful campsite. While there, we took a drive up Mount Washington. This is the highest point in the Northeast. Then on to Vermont, stopping in Montpelier. And then to Waterbury for some Ben & Jerry's ice cream. It was good. Stayed at a fellow RCer's house near Burlington, and then we had dinner in Burlington as well. And then I went over and attended an RC flying event in Crown Point, New York, right on Lake Champlain. From there to Charles Barkley State Forest, New York, another secluded forest campsite in upstate. Jack got a couple hikes in and a few naps. Made our way through the Finger Lakes region of New York, stopping at a couple of wineries along the way. Then made our way over to the Canadian side of Niagara Falls. We stayed there for dinner at the Skylon Tower. The views were really amazing. Got to see the fireworks that evening. While at Niagara, visited the power plant there, one of the first hydroelectric plants. I also got to ice skate at the Niagara University ice rink, visit a section of Erie Canal, Took some hikes along the Niagara River, just north of the falls. From Niagara Falls, we went back to Pennsylvania and spent 5 nights at the Allegheny Forest, another secluded campsite by a water reservoir. There was lots of hiking trails around the area with most beautiful views. Then it was off to Cleveland, Ohio for a visit to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Then it was back to Pennsylvania to some historic sites, including Fort Necessity and 2 homes designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Falling Water, one of his most famous homes, built in 1937. Then a quick stop in West Virginia, and on to Dayton, Ohio to visit my brother and his family. While in Dayton, we visited the National Air Museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Then to Indiana to do a tour of the Jayco factory where the RV was made. From there it was off to Michigan. First to the southwest portion, visiting some of the wineries, and then to the sand dunes of Lake Michigan. Then we drove over to Detroit for a day at the Ford factory and the museum there. From there we made it to Mackinac Bridge and spent a couple of nights in the Michigan Upper Peninsula. Then it was on to Madison, Wisconsin, visiting state buildings and a couple of local city parks. We made our way over to Spring Green. This is where Taliesin is located, the site of Frank Lloyd Wright's home and his school of architecture. From there it was over to Kohler for a factory tour of the Kohler plant. This is where they make plumbing products and the engines made by Kohler. After that, we made our way over to our last major stop for our Northeastern. This was in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We spent a week here, experiencing some of the greatest displays of aviation. I also got to meet Tucker Gott, a famous paramotorist.
From Oshkosh, we headed back to Atlanta with a quick stop along the way visiting family in Abington, Virginia. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Right now I'm in Buffalo, Wyoming in a wildlife management area. I've stayed here about a week and I will be posting more videos of this and other travels I'll have coming up, so please make sure to check out my new Living Nomadic Dreams YouTube channel. I'll have a link for that down below. I'm going to discontinue this channel, so please make sure to go to that one. If you want more information or detailed pictures, you can check out my Facebook link as well. I'll have that down below as well. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you on my new channel.